God wants to have our minds surrendered to Him. And so we're going to have, of course, our meeting this evening. We've got the worship hour tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock and an afternoon meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So you won't want to miss that. And want to also welcome our viewing audience, those of you who are joining us live and also on 3ABN. We're happy that you've joined us, and we hope that you will be tremendously blessed by our subject this weekend. And so we do want to begin with a word of prayer, and those of you who are able to kneel with me, let's go ahead and kneel together and pray. Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you so much for the privilege that we have to be here this evening. Lord, we're grateful for your word and the counsels of the spirit of prophecy. We're grateful for the days in which we live. We believe that you're coming soon. With this, Father, we understand that the devil will do everything he can to try and get us off track. And Father, we pray that we will stand firmly on your word and the spirit of prophecy and the grand truths for this time until the great day that you come. We ask your blessing on our meeting this evening. We ask your blessing on Kok Tho. Pray that you would fill him with the double portion of your spirit and that you would give him the words to say this evening that bring clarity and the emphatic clearness of truth on the important subject of meditation and the mind. We ask your blessing in this meeting. In the name of Jesus, we ask it. Amen. You know, Kok Tho, I should also mention, go ahead and come on up. I should also mention that he is the chairman of the Anand Sanitarium and Training School in Malaysia. And I forgot to ask you how long you have been there doing that work at the sanitarium.
Anand has been operating for 16 years now.
So 16 years.
Yes, and 3 of us were the founders, a doctor and a therapist and myself.
Okay, excellent. Thank you again for being with us, and we'll give the rest of the time over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, good evening, and happy Sabbath. Well, I'm very glad to be here, being able to present this material to you. The material comes in actually 3 parts, and they build up on each other. And tonight we start with the neuroscience of it. But the ability to grasp the 3rd part, which happens on tomorrow at 3 p.m., is dependent on how you assimilate the first 2. So please pay attention, and we'll get it right into it. All right, perhaps first my name. On Audioverse, it's written in the Western style. This is the family name, so it's Kok Tho Yip. On YouTube, it's written in the Chinese style. All right, so tonight's subject is neuroscience of the brain and the mind in meditation. I will start at the deep end of meditation and then show you the neuroscience, what neuroscience says about the other phenomena. But this is the deep end. This is what really counts. All right? Now, if you look at the meditation material, what neuroscience says about it, the most common phrase or sentence is the frontal lobe goes offline. Now, every one of us has this frontal lobe, and it's the most important part of your brain. It contains, of the brain mass, it's 33%. But its functionality is what really counts. It is the place of worship, of love, of knowing right from wrong. It's the place of your will. Right? So here is that place which makes us human. It makes us spiritual. Right? Now, if your frontal lobe should go offline, it's there, but if it should go offline, you're in trouble. Right? And meditation takes the frontal lobe offline. I'll show you what the experts say. in yoga, nidra, a kind of yoga, as they begin to meditate, the cerebral blood flow to the frontal lobe goes down. Now, that is deactivating your frontal lobe. That's yoga. And Andrew Newberg, he's one of the foremost researchers on what happens in the brain, and he looks at it online as it happens. And he is wanting to know what happens with Tibetan meditators, with nuns doing meditation. So he's looking at all kinds of meditation. Now, here's what he says. Meditation, we won't read all the words, but we'll focus that he said, meditation-based practices affect beliefs and experiences through a frontal-parietal network. What he means is that the frontal lobe and another lobe called the parietal lobe is involved in mystical experiences. All right? Let's see what else he says. And here he is. We won't read the words. I'll explain it to you. Here he's looking at Tibetan meditators doing mantra. Right? And when they do mantra, the purpose of the mantra is to empty the mind, to screen off all incoming data, information, thoughts to the mind. So by focusing on the mantra, they keep all thoughts away. And they do this for hours. Now, when the frontal lobe is starved of information, it's deactivated. When that happens, the parietal lobe goes down. Now, what is the parietal lobe? The parietal lobe is what tells you where you are in three-dimensional space. Right? For example, this young lady, she knows she's 20 feet from me, perhaps 30 feet from the ceiling. She has a broad sense of her body shape. She knows that she's got her hand to her face. Now, when the parietal goes down, you lose your position in three-dimensional space completely. So, there you are meditating, and the parietal goes down. You feel that you are without a physical border, that you are part of the whole universe without limit, and the whole universe is part of you. Now, this is the deep end or the high point of meditation. Right? So the experts say this is losing sense of self, that sense of self. They feel at one with God, at one with their spiritual mantra, whatever it is they are looking at. Now, this experience is dramatic. It's mind-altering. It's beyond this world. And at that moment, when the meditator feels that he is beyond without a limit, what he feels is that there is no physical limit. He is infinite, borderless. And he also feels that he has got no mental limit and no spiritual limit. All right, no spiritual borders. In other words, he goes beyond good and evil, heaven and hell. He goes beyond life and death. He gets into this place where if you were meditating with Hindus, they would say you're in nirvana. And if you were meditating with Buddhists, they would say you have reached Buddhahood, or you've been liberated like Buddha. All right. Now, Christians are using the mantras, and they use so-called Christian words in the mantra. But it does the same thing. And when that happens, Christian meditators or contemplatives say, you're in the presence of God. The same neural phenomena explained in many ways. Right? So it's just neural phenomena. And it is the suggestion of your fellow meditators to tell you, to make sense of this feeling, and to suggest to you what it is. So here is the danger. It is the same neural phenomena given different interpretations. Now, Jordan Grafman, he is a cognitive neuroscientist and the director of brain injury research at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. Now, this is what he said of damaged brains, damaged frontal lobes. He said, the frontal lobes are the most evolved areas of the human brain and help control and make sense of the perceptual input we get from the world. Further investigation revealed that damage to a specific area of the brain, known as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, was linked to markedly increased mysticism. When the frontal lobe's inhibitory functions are suppressed, a door of perception can open, increasing the chances of mystical experiences. Now, what he's saying is people with damaged frontal lobe are more susceptible to mystical experiences. All right, now, so the meditators use many methods. In yoga, in Tibetan, is mantra, to quieten down the frontal lobe, to reduce, unknown to them perhaps, but science shows it, the cerebral blood flow goes down, they starve it, and the parietal goes down. Right? So they have a perfectly healthy, the meditators have a perfectly healthy frontal lobe. But in meditation, they deactivate it, they take it offline. So they treat it as if it is damaged. So the mystical experiences happen. So this is what is involved in this experience. And this is the deep end or the high end of Eastern meditation. Let's look at other phenomena. Now, I want to get you acquainted with this word called non-dual. We'll do some of it today, but tomorrow I'm going to focus on this aspect intensely so that you understand its evil. All right? But for today, that experience which I described is interpreted as nirvana, satori. This is Japanese, Zen. I used to do Zen. And nirvana is the same as satori. Okay? That is the high point. Oneness, because at that point of the meditation process, when the meditator feels beyond, without limit, he is one with everything without limit. So it's oneness. It's moment of realization, enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness, and now, in Christian contemplation or meditation, oneness with God. Now, Columbia University talks about hypnotism. Apparently, 30% of Americans can be hypnotized by another. All right? Now, they hypnotized people and looked at what happens in the brain post-hypnotism. In other words, after successful hypnotism, what happens? Now, they say in the front of the brain, the frontal lobe, are two places. One is called the ACC, anterior cingulate cortex. That is responsible for the will, the strength of your will. There's another part called the LFC, lateral frontal cortex. That is responsible for reality. Now, these two parts, your will and your reality, are always active. It's your protection to know what's real and to have the will to do what's correct. All right? They are active. After they've successfully hypnotized someone, they found that these two parts are dissociated, disconnected. Either one is off or the other is off. Either the will is off or reality is off, disconnected. That is successful hypnotism. All right? Now, I want to tell you a story. I'll make it up as I go along, and to demonstrate how it works. Let's say some of my friends bring me to a temple in Singapore. I've never been to a temple before, and they worship there, and they bring me to this temple. And as I walk in, people are speaking like in the Western countries, in the charismatic church, like in tongues. They're making noises, and some of them are in trances, right, moving around. And my will and my reality react. Right? My reality says, oh, this is not real. And my will says, I will not give in to this. I will not be part of this. So I depart. Now, a week later, My friends bring me back, and they said, oh, we will introduce you to some really nice and good people there. Right, so I go again, and as I walk in, the same scene. But this time, they introduced me to the top surgeon in town. And he is in a trance. And he's speaking in gibberish. The top doctor, the top lawyer. And my will and my reality says to me, oh, this is real. The best people in town are speaking in a trance, speaking gibberish. And God must be with them. So my reality shuts down. And I am hypnotized. Right? That's how it works. Now, no one had dangled a watch and waved it in front of me, but it's situational hypnosis. The suggestion comes from the situation. Right? That's the suggestion. Bypasses my will and my reality, and I am in. Now, let's see what else there is. Other scientists, Everson, Travis, they say this. They're very clear. Sometimes meditation results in profound changes in consciousness, leading individuals into trance-type states, states of self-hypnosis or mystical states. It's very clear in the scientific literature that meditation is self-hypnosis. Now, whilst 30% of Americans can be hypnotized by another, when you're doing self-hypnosis or doing meditation, you're hypnotizing yourself. When that happens, 100% of meditators can be hypnotized because it's done by yourself to yourself. Right? Now, James Braid, in 1840, he's noted as the founder of hypnotism, a Scotsman. And in his original concept, someone has to hypnotize another. And he wrote a book about hypnotism, and it went far and wide. And his friends in Asia and Persia said, hey, James, it's not true what you said. They can self-hypnotize. They can do it in Persia, and the yogis in India, they are doing self-hypnosis. And James had a look at this and finally had to agree. And he said this in his book. There is no need for an exoteric, which means external, influence. In other words, James said, you can hypnotize yourself. Right? So that's meditation. In fact, he's saying that the yogis of India are self-hypnotizing. This is back in 1840, right? Columbia University and the recent scientific research are just confirming it now. Now, in the East, where I come from, the meditators, they are recluses, they are hermits. They are in the caves and by the rivers, in the upper reaches of the Ganges. They are not sociable. And as well, we were a British colony, and when we were educated in English and so forth, we thought that these folks are not to be mixed with, right? So now that meditation has come into the West, it's repackaged, and it's fashionable. The celebrities do it, the musicians do it. It becomes so acceptable as if it is transformational. It is wellness. It makes you more sociable. In my part of the world, they are not. Now, I had a friend whom I hadn't seen for 50 years, and it was like a class reunion, and he didn't turn up. But after high school, he became a meditator. And when I and I had not been to the class reunion for 50 years as well. So I was there, and they told me, oh, so-and-so, he's a meditator, and he's gone to Europe and Australia. Because he speaks English, he's in demand as a meditator, as a guru, as a teacher. So I said, oh, I must meet him because I'm interested in the subject. So I called him up. And he said, I can't see you right now. I said, when can I see you? He said, I am in silence for 2 months. And when 2 months was up, I went to see him. And I had to drive from the capital of the city 3 hours down and then follow a dirt road for another hour and then found him in almost a hermitage. Right? This is the meditative mind. And I'll explain why they detach from the world. Yeah? That's how they live. Right? So this idea of repackaged meditation is false. It's a false impression given to you. Now, so these folks, the Eastern meditation gives you sensory phenomena. I've just described one, but I'm describing these ones. Visual acuity, it makes your eyes, you see more images than you should. It gives you tranquility and bliss. It gives you addiction and it gives you reward and gives you this pervasive tranquility. And it launches you. The whole purpose of the sensation is to launch you into something they call divinity. That's the whole purpose of it. Now, let's see. Now, Buddha, he meditated, and I'll tell you the story. Buddha was a prince in a palace, northern India. The king and queen loved him, didn't want him to see death, didn't want him to see old age. Brought in young servants, retired old servants. Buddha grew up, got married, had children, never thought that there was such a thing as death. One day, the account goes, he follows a charioteer out of the palace walls, and for the first time in his life saw a corpse, saw a funeral, and it depressed him, it freaked him out. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, and finally he found peace in meditation. Now, in Buddhist thinking, there is such a thing as karma, right? Karma is a good and evil account. If you do some evil, you've got to offset it with good. If your account is negative, more evil than good, you reincarnate into your next life, into something worse than a human being. You may become a pig or a rat. Now that's reincarnation. So there were two things that tormented Buddhists and Buddha. Right now. So when he meditated, he got to this point, that high point I described, where he was part of everything and everything was part of him without limit. At that point, he lost the grasp for good and evil. He could not differentiate between good and evil. And so without good and evil, he was liberated from karma. Without good and evil, there is no karma. So he was freed from karma. So that was his liberation. But he was also liberated. The polar opposites disappear, you see. You go beyond these limits. And so there is also no life, no death. Because the polar opposites disappear. Right? When you become part of the whole universe, you become infinite, limitless. So when there's no life, no death, there is no reincarnation. So he was liberated in one moment of perception from good and evil, karma, and life and death, reincarnation. That was his moment of liberation. Now, if anyone should do this kind of meditation, what danger confronts us? No good and evil? We don't differentiate? No life, no death? So if there's no life, no death, what value is there of Christ and his resurrection? Right? So we go into their frame of thinking. Now, so here it is, in this non-dual, this is non-dual, no opposites, right? Non-dual, remember this word, non-dual, applied dangerously spiritually to good and evil, no life and death, no sin and righteousness, no heaven and hell, no God and Satan. Now, how do they then come from this, that God and all men is one? How do they come to that? And they do. That's the crux of their belief, the very basis of their belief, the foundation of their belief. So this is how it happens. And it's pantheistic, clearly. And this is how it happens. God is in everything. He's in the air, in the flowers, in the trees. He's also in every man. Divinity is given inborn as a birthright to every man. So, when God is so pervasive in everything and in every man, man is God and God is man. So the meditative high point, where you have no limit, means that you have become everything and everything is God. So God is one, God is all. That is how it happens. And so it is their basic tenet. Now, I want to explain non-dual clearly to everyone here so that we make no mistake of how to understand this. Let's say the people on my right, they are all saints. All right? Just for an example. They're all saints. And the people on my left, they're all wicked. I beg your pardon, but let's just imagine that. Pastor as well. All right. Now, here I am. I do not care to differentiate. I don't care whether you are good, and I am indifferent to that you are all good. At the same time, I don't care that you're evil. I'm indifferent to that you're all evil. Sometimes I choose to sit here. Sometimes I choose to sit there. My mind, in terms of good and evil, is non-dual. I can be on both sides. In fact, I'm so indifferent that I have not differentiated, therefore I have combined good and evil. Right? Duality is good, evil. That's duality. But if I don't differentiate, I have brought them together. That's non-dual. You follow this? Right, left. If I can blend my two hands into one, it's neither left nor right. It's a non-dual third entity. All right? Now, if I were a spy and you were two countries at war, and I spy for you against them, and I also spy for them against you, I'm a non-dual spy. All right? I think we get the idea. All right? So, take the next one. All right? Love and hate. If I am indifferent to love and indifferent to hate, I am so indifferent, I'm cold, I'm detached from it. I am a non-dualist. I couldn't care less to hate or to love. That's non-dual. And that is where the mind of the meditator goes to, at the high point, at the deep end. The other effects only help it. Now, we've heard about yoga. 280 million people are doing yoga around the world. Now, what does it mean? Yoga means the divinity of all humanity. In other words, all humanity, whether you're Hindu or not, whether you have God or not, whether you believe or not, you've got divinity, inborn, given. Now, when they say namaste, and that's the Hindu greeting, and the yogas, when they do yoga, they do this. It means that the divine in me, honors the divine in you. I assume, and they assume, as their fundamental foundation, that there's divinity in all men. So I honor the divine in you. And you say namaste back to me. And you assert that you also see the divine in me. So it's not just I honor, it also means I bow to the divine in you. Right? That's the assumption of divinity, that all man is divine because God is everywhere. Now, there are casualties of non-dual. Kropinski was a young man in the US. He went and meditated with TM, transcendental meditation, and he suffered psychologically. It took him a year of therapy to get out of it. And he took a case against TM and won. And in the Kropinski trials, there were some cases that they cited. They cited evidence of the German youth ministry in Germany taking a case, a legal case against TM. And they won. And the case cited damage, psychological damage to German youth, and that they became dishonest. Now, imagine this. Think about this. The frontal lobe goes down. You can't choose right from wrong. You can't differentiate. obviously you become dishonest. That's what happened. And they won. And this BP stands for Buddha Pill. There's a book out that I think you all should read, written by two psychologists, giving in-depth the good part and the bad parts of meditation. But they have surfaced a lot of negatives. In fact, they began writing this book, wanting to write the book with the title, From Monster to Buddha, because they had so much faith in meditation that it would transform people from monsters to a saint like Buddha. But as they researched and as they looked at this whole thing, they had to change the title. They even had a chapter in the book called The Dark Side of Meditation. All right? And they changed the title to Buddha Pill. Perhaps it may work, but perhaps this pill won't work either. All right? That's how they ended it. Zen. Now, I did Zen. Well, they get you to the same point. And in World War II, Zen was used to teach kamikaze pilots, suicide pilots, that after they've emptied their plane of bombs or ammunition, they would perhaps save the last bomb and dive and die in the process into a ship. Because Zen taught them there was no life, no death. It's not a formula, oh, there's no life, no death, okay? It's a meditative process that gets the mind to the point of feeling that way. Buddha approves of killing. In the sutras, right, the common folk has still to differentiate about life and death. But the meditator, the one who has been enlightened, he can see beyond life and death. And for him, killing is okay, because there's no life, no death. And in Buddha Pill, they talk about how some gurus, some teachers, had used the idea of non-dual with their female participants to lure them into sexual contact. Not you, not I, we're one. You see how dangerous this is? Now, we want to talk about Psalms 19 now, and look at what real meditation, authentic meditation, what are the outcomes, and how different it is from Eastern. All right, now, let's scan Psalms 19. Now, in Psalms 19, verse 14, King David said, "May the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord." Right? So, it is clearly meditative. It is, I call this the gold standard of Bible meditation. So let us look at this gold standard and compare Eastern meditation outcomes with it. So let's scan the first 13 verses. And it says this: "The heavens declare God universally, handiwork, his speech, knowledge." And this speech and knowledge comes from heaven. You know, it's evident in the heavens, in the sun and the stars and the sky. And then King David saw the sun as a bridegroom, a strong man to run a race, from which nothing can be hidden. Now, if he saw the sun as a bridegroom, he is the bride. There's going to be a wedding. All right? And then he began to meditate on the law, the statutes, commandments, judgments, and said that they were better than fine gold and honey. Now, what's happening here? He wants to be prepared for the wedding. He's meditating and he sees the value of the statutes, judgment, the law. And he said they provide warning and reward. And then he came to say this: "Clean me from my secret faults." So he got to a point in meditation where he trusted God so much that he opened his heart completely to God, to be searched of faults that he did not know even about. Faults that he knew not about. He offered his heart to God to be searched. Now, love is not blind. The love of God is not blind. The love of God is searching. That's what's happening. There's a wedding. Right? There's love, and it's searching his heart. And then the very next thing he said was, "Keep me from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me." We may assume all kinds of wonderful things about ourselves in relation to our service for God. But here he is saying, show me that if my assumption should be wrong, If they should be presumptuous, show them to me. So at this point, King David had a cleansing experience. He got to know his secret faults and his presumptuous sins in the love of God, in the context of a wedding. So the outcome was he confronted his own evil, his need for God. He was interactive, God is compassionate, and he was acting, reacting. The meditators get to a high point where they do not even differentiate between good and evil. So I hope you see the big difference. It's tranquil. It's dramatic. But you cease to differentiate. So, the outcomes of biblical meditation is oneness with God, as in a marriage. As in a marriage with the bridegroom. You become faultless before God. Sins are revealed and cleansed. That is sanctification itself. And I want to focus our mind on Hebrews 2:11. That oneness with God is sanctified unity. Now, Hebrews 2:11 says this, "For both he that sanctifieth and they who are sanctified are all of one." Both God who sanctifies and they who are sanctified, both are now one. That's oneness with God. That's sanctified unity. Right? That's how Bible meditation, dwelling on the Word, it would bring us there, just as it brought King David there. For which cause, he is not ashamed to call them brethren. That word used by God in relation to those sanctified is crucial. He calls us brethren. Now, in Matthew 25:40, now you remember the account. The wise virgins were separated from the foolish. The sheep were separated from the goats. The wise servant, they were separated into two groups, on the left and on the right. And in 25:40, the king said, "When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in prison, you visited me." And they said, the ones on the right said, "When did we do that?" And he said, "When you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me." In other words, the king is saying, these, my brethren, are one with me. He calls them brethren. Whatever you do to them, you do to me. Whatever you do to me, you do to them. We are one. Right? That's the emphasis, isn't it? And then he said to the ones on the left, he said, "You didn't do this to me. You didn't do that to me." And they said, "When?" And he said, "When you did not do it to the least of these." So, oneness is sanctification. He calls us brethren when that happens. And that's oneness with God. Sanctified unity is oneness with God. Proverbs 8:13 says this, "The fear of the Lord is to hate evil." Now, the three angels' message starts with fear God. And here it tells us the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. The more we love God, the more we hate sin. And the greater our love, when it becomes unconditional, when we love God with all our hearts, all our mind, all our soul, when we become unconditional in our love for God, we would hate evil immensely. So meditation, biblical meditation on the right, focuses on the Bible. It's personal. It's God as a person. It's love-based, it's active, it's interactive, it's reflective, it's passionate, it's consummate, it's purgative in relation to a person. Now the East, what do? They focus on a mantra. The purpose of the mantra is to keep all thoughts away from the mind. All. They do it for hours. Right? It doesn't matter if you do what mantra you choose, but it's the repetition. Now they focus on breath. When I was doing Zen, they taught us to follow our breath, to count our breath. Right? As you breathe out relaxedly is 1, in 2, 3, 4, and so forth in cycles of 10. The purpose, when you focus on breath, which is nothing, is to empty your mind. Or they got us to focus on a koan. Right? It means, in Japanese, a riddle. The riddle was, what is the sound of one hand clapping? What's the sound of one hand clapping? Nothing. For hours. To get us to the same place. And there are meditation which is non-focus, where you drift, all right? But the whole idea of drifting is to let it drift, not to focus. So they get to a point of nothingness, of silence, and in that silence and nothingness, there's some self-observation. And it is non-judgment, dispassionate, value-free, bare attention. Which fits with the fact it's value-free, it means non-dual, not good, not evil. Value-free, it's non-judgmental. They say also they use the word non-conceptual. In other words, no life, no death. That's where they go. And these values are used in mindfulness therapy. You find the same words. So in mindfulness, they also follow their breath. But they say when thoughts arise of your past and your difficulties with your emotions, there's no judgment. Just observe it dispassionately. And they bring in other therapies. Now, what Sister White says, what is justification by faith? It is the work of God in laying the glory of man in the dust and doing for man that which it is not in his power to do for himself. When men see their own nothingness, they are prepared to be clothed with the righteousness of Christ. Eastern meditators don't get there, don't even think about it. But as we saw with King David, God showed him, and he offered himself to be searched in love. Right? So the first thing, the very first thing that God would do for a man is, in his love for us, will show us our evil. Then he can make us righteous. Then he can use us. That is biblical. So biblical meditation gets us there. Right? So dwelling upon the goodness of God gets us there. Now, our ultimate response to God's unconditional love is this. And this is where meditators and even Christian contemplative spirituality misuse, and I'll show you how they misuse unconditional love. The true response to unconditional love of God is this, I think. The love of God is unconditional. It's immeasurable. Is infinite, is incomparable. That's what Ellen White said. But as we receive his love, as we perceive his love, and as we see his love as our need, our response is to respond unconditionally, to love him with all our minds, all our hearts, all our soul. That is unconditional response. That is the moment when we really feel the power of God, the love of God. Biblical meditation gets us to this point. I'll tell you some Zen stories so that we get it right in our mind how they appeal to us. When I was doing Zen, they talked about, the whole idea is that there's power within. Power in our minds, right? And the story goes that in a room like this, there's an apple right by the door. An archer can shoot an arrow when the lights are on at the apple and hit it. But the archer now sets another apple and the lights go off. But in his mind, he holds the image in his mind. He arms the bow, he shoots in the dark, and he hits it. So a Zen archer is the one who has the power over his mind. So by the mind, they say all things arise and all things are overcome. So there's power within. That's how they teach it. It's a sweet story. I will skip the old monk and the young monk because I think I'm running out of time. I'll tell you another time. All right. What does Zen and all other meditation teach? It's discovery and realization of the inborn divinity within and without. Now, their concept is God is without, in the flowers and the trees in the air, and also within. So it's discovery. Now, why do they go into nothingness and silence? Because they presume that there is divinity in all men, inborn. It is our distraction, our worries, and our monkey mind that prevents us from sensing our own divinity. But if you meditate and silent and get into silence and empty your mind, you discover it. And the more perfect your silence, the more perfect your divinity. That's what's driving this whole thing. In Eastern meditation, so they say, when there is nothing left in your mind, when all distractions are perfectly silenced, then your divinity is perfectly realized. Now, the Eastern meditation and emergent church teaches that divinity is 100% already there. And it is based on the immortal soul. All right? So it's the discovery of the immortal soul. It is just waiting to be discovered, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be realized. But what does the Bible say? The Bible in 2 Peter 1:4 invites us to be partakers of the divine nature. And how does that work? It says this, and besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and add to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. So, when the Holy Spirit comes on us, He works on us. We partake of the divine nature in bits and pieces, progressively. That's partaking and being one with the divine, because we yield to His workings. That is biblical. I've got quite a lot more. I'll speed up here. So Buddha Pill, this book tells you, it doesn't matter what mantra you use. It can be a Sanskrit mantra like Om, or it can be Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. You get to the same place. This is my late Prime Minister, and he meditated. And he meditated because of this man on the right. He is Mr. Ng. He looks after Singapore's billions invested overseas. After the financial crisis, which the US caused, we were very troubled. And this man was not troubled. He was tranquil because he said he did meditation and asked Mr. Lee if he wanted to learn. And Mr. Lee said yes. And they went to London and met this Benedictine monk. And the Benedictine monk offered Mr. Lee 2 mantras, a choice of 2 mantras. It doesn't matter. You can choose the Chinese one, which sounds like this, Ome Tofut. Or you can choose Maranatha. And Mr. Lee said in the newspapers, I chose Maranatha because it's easier on my English tongue. He didn't want to offend the Chinese. He just said it was easier on my English tongue. So it doesn't matter what mantra you choose. And in meditation, you start as you are now in beta waves, fast wave beta, but very soon you go into pre-sleep and deep sleep, slow waves. Now you're in beta because you are assessing what I'm trying to tell you, right? You're wondering if I'm telling you the truth. You're comparing with data that you've had before. Fast wave beta. But soon in meditation, you slow down your brain waves. There are more slow brain waves in your brain. And you're drifting. Now, when I fall asleep, as I begin to fall asleep, I can't concentrate. I'm in Walla Walla, and next moment, I'm in Singapore at the same time. Right? That's slow waves. And then you get deep sleep, where you're knocked out. So meditation doesn't give you that ability to concentrate and to assess. The amygdala calms down. Now, the amygdala is a fight or flight mechanism, the back of the brain. It's where you feel things. If you saw a snake, you jump, fight or flight. When the amygdala is overactive, you suffer depression. Now, when you meditate, the amygdala slows down. It slows down to a point that 3 weeks, they tested people. 3 weeks after stopping meditation, there was still that sedation. Now, what they did was, before meditation, they showed them 200 over pictures. Some were delightful, some were frightening. After meditation, 3 weeks after stopping, they showed them the same pictures and measured their response. The delightful is not as delightful anymore. The frightening is not as frightening anymore. They are sedated. 3 weeks after. Now, if you thought, oh, I'm stressed out, I'll do meditation to regain my concentration. You did it. It's true. When your amygdala calms down, you regain your concentration. That's true. But if you thought, now I'll do more meditation to give myself a lift, doesn't happen. Because the delightful isn't as delightful as before. Right? So for normal people, no, it doesn't raise your delightful. Endogenous dopamine, dopamine that your brain secretes, it causes heightened sensory imagery. If a psychiatrist were to show you an ink blot and you had normal amount of dopamine, you would see a butterfly. But if you're meditating and you had 65% more dopamine, you see a jet plane, an eagle. That's visualization. Dopamine also causes addiction. You get addicted to meditation. That's why meditate for long hours. Right? Now, let's see what else. Temporal lobe. They stimulated the temporal lobe and they experienced what they perceive as God. They experienced a presence besides themselves. Some thought they were angels, some thought they were the deceased. The temporal lobe is also stimulated in meditation. So you sense presences. Andrew Newberg says the temporal lobe are clearly important in religious and spiritual experiences, and they are stimulated. Now in Buddha Pill, they talked about the Oxford Mindfulness Center. Now this is Oxford, the Mindfulness Center. And in this experiment, they were wanting to prove that mindfulness works. The meditative component of mindfulness cognitive therapy, that component. The component that works is mindfulness. They want to prove that. All right? So there are 300 people, and they separated them into different groups. And one group was doing mindfulness with cognitive therapy. Another group was doing only cognitive therapy, no mindfulness, no meditation. And the third group just went on seeing the psychiatrist, doing the homework, seeing their GPs. And when they looked at the results, and this is more information of how they did this experiment, but when they looked at the results, they saw the relapse rates were close to 50% for all three groups. Now what it showed is this. The cognitive therapy group had as good results as the mindfulness-based and cognitive therapy. So mindfulness did not work. They failed it. And this is Oxford Mindfulness Center. Couldn't prove that mindfulness was effective. So it looks like the cognitive therapy is what really worked. Now, there are reports now that says, oh, meditation helps preserve the aging brain. The gray matter is more substantial. Right? And it was a great report. It was done by, I think, UCLA. But the researchers had, the group that they studied was very small. And they had not eliminated other factors. The researchers themselves cautioned that they cannot draw a direct causal connection between meditation and preserving gray matter in the brain. Too many other factors may come into play, including lifestyle choices, personality traits, genetic brain differences. They had not isolated that for demonstration. So it was too generic, this report. There was another report that says it affects rival antidepressants and depression. But this experiment was done on people with medical conditions, such as insomnia, fibromyalgia, and some with mental illnesses. So it is a substitute for people who are sick, substitute of depressants. But the meditation does not give hope and optimism. Right? People who suffer from panic attacks and so forth are given a sedative. It quietens them down, but it doesn't give them long-term hope and joy and optimism. What is needed is activation of the frontal lobe. That's where it really counts. Now, 8 weeks of mindfulness-based reduction, MBSR, they found cortical thickness in the hippocampus and improved learning and memory. There was a decrease in brain cell volume in the amygdala. But these are not surprising. If you drove a taxi in London and the roads are complicated, that part of your brain that recognizes roads will be thickened. So the fact that the brain is thickened is to be expected. All right? Now, the other thing that is, the amygdala is shrank in volume, and that's true. Even when you study the Bible and meditate on the closing scenes of Calvary, a thoughtful hour a day, your amygdala will shrink. Your anxieties will go away. So, it doesn't matter. It is not mindfulness that does this, it's where you focus your mind that does this. So, mindfulness is not that panacea for these things. So, I'm going to cover more tomorrow. So I hope to see you. Tomorrow we'll go into the depths and the detail of what non-dual is and how pervasive it is in society. Right? And when you understand non-dual and how pervasive it is in the arts, in therapy, in Greek philosophy, in Chinese Taoism and Buddhism, and Tai Chi and exercises and yoga, you will become aware that Satan has been very active in laying his groundwork for the end of time. And that will prepare us to understand the third presentation. And I'm going to show where all this is really going. So I hope to see you all again tomorrow, and may God bless you all. Shall we end with prayer? Right? Our Father who's in heaven, we give thanks, most of all, that you've given us Jesus Christ. And you've given us the truth in the Bible, and given us that love that shows our need for you, that we are evil and in need of God. So we pray, asking for the revelation of your truth, that as we behold Christ, you will raise us all from glory to glory. So we pray for that oneness of mind.